She was struggling to breathe, and still they threw her in a hole. A woman who relied on a portable ventilator was pushed into a pit by a heartless businessman. He thought she wouldn't make it, but he had no idea what was coming next. This story is about cruelty, resistance, and a twist that no one expected. Subscribe to the channel and discover how, even without air, she changed things and surprised everyone. In the heart of Portland, where cobblestone streets wind between historic buildings and time seems to move with a cadence distinct from the rest of the world, Hope Matthews led a meticulously organized life. At 42, her existence had adapted to the slow rhythm imposed by her chronic lung disease, diagnosed nearly a decade ago. Each morning, Hope awoke with the first light of the sun filtering through the gauzy curtains of her small apartment in the artist's district. With calculated movements, she connected her portable respirator, that faithful companion that never left her side. The device emitted a soft hum, a constant melody that marked the tempo of her days. "Good morning, Mrs. Matthews," greeted Mr. Jackson, the baker, when she passed by his shop on her way to work. "How are those lungs doing today?" "As always, Mr. Jackson holding on," she replied with a shy smile, adjusting the strap of her bag where she carried the small oxygen tank. Hope worked part-time at Wilson Historical Documents, a small company dedicated to the digitization and archiving of judicial documents. Her work as a document reviewer allowed her to maintain a stable and predictable routine just as she liked it. For 6 years, she had meticulously reviewed each document, detecting errors that escaped the untrained eye, earning the silent respect of her colleagues. The office occupied a 3-story building in the historic downtown. Hope preferred the second floor, where the tall windows let in abundant natural light, facilitating her meticulous work. Her desk, always impeccably organized, was her little kingdom. There, among files and archives, she found a strange peace. Everything changed that Monday in April, when Richard Valencia made his triumphant entrance into the company. Tall, 35 years old, with an impeccable suit and an attitude that overflowed with ambition, the new owner toured the facilities with a calculating gaze, evaluating every corner, every employee, as if they were pieces of a puzzle that he needed to reorganize at his convenience. "The company has been acquired in a corporate restructuring," he announced in the first general meeting. "Wilson Historical Documents is now part of the Valencia Business Group. There will be changes necessary for the survival and growth of the business." His words, pronounced with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, sent a chill through Hope. She observed her colleagues nodding, some with enthusiasm, others with resignation. No one seemed to perceive what she intuited. That smile hid something sinister. During the first weeks, the changes were subtle. Hope's schedule was modified without prior notice, forcing her to arrive an hour earlier. Her functions were expanded to include reviewing documents that previously didn't pass through her department. Her workload doubled without any explanation. "It's temporary, Hope," Lucy Ordway assured her, the administrative assistant who had been working there as long as she had. "We're all adjusting to the new management." But Hope knew there was something more. She noticed how Valencia observed her when he thought she wasn't aware. She felt his evaluating gaze, calculating something that she couldn't decipher. One afternoon, while organizing some old files, Hope discovered an inconsistency in the records. An important judicial document related to a tax fraud case of a local construction company had been marked as lost, but she remembered reviewing it just 2 weeks earlier. When she searched the digital system, she found no trace of it. "How strange," she murmured to herself. "I'm sure I digitized it myself." That small anomaly awakened her curiosity. She began to pay more attention, discreetly noting each inconsistency she found. Soon the pattern became evident. Documents related to certain judicial cases systematically disappeared, both physically and digitally. One morning, Richard Valencia summoned her to his office. The office, previously cozy under Mr. Wilson's direction, now looked cold and minimalist. Valencia received her with that smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Matthews, your work is meticulous," he said, pronouncing the last word as if it were a defect. But we need to adapt to the new times. Efficiency, speed, productivity. Do you understand me? I've always fulfilled my responsibilities, Mr. Valencia, she responded, feeling as if the air seemed to be scarce in the room despite her respirator. Of course, but now I need you to sign this. He slid a document across the desk. A simple confidentiality agreement, nothing unusual. Hope took the paper, reading each line with the same attention she dedicated to historical documents. Her heart accelerated as she understood what she was really signing. A declaration that would make her responsible for any accidental loss of documents under her supervision. I need time to review this carefully, she said, returning the document unsigned. Valencia's smile disappeared. There's no time, Mrs. Matthews. It's now or never. Then I'll have to decline, sir. I don't sign what I don't completely understand. The silence that followed was dense, almost tangible. Valencia looked at her fixedly, and for an instant, Hope saw something dangerous in his eyes. As you wish, he finally said, recovering his artificial smile. But you should understand that decisions have consequences. The next day, Hope found her belongings moved to the basement of the building, a damp, poorly ventilated space that housed the old, unused archive. Her new position consisted of a rickety table and an uncomfortable chair surrounded by dusty shelves. Due to reorganization issues, Lucy explained, avoiding her gaze, they're direct orders from above. For someone with respiratory problems, that environment was more than an inconvenience. It was a direct threat to her health. The dust accumulated over years, and the humidity that permeated the walls made her respirator work twice as hard. That night, in the solitude of her apartment, Hope made a decision. She took out a new notebook and began to document everything. Dates, names, missing documents. If Valencia thought he could intimidate her, he was very wrong. Perhaps her body was fragile, but her determination was unbreakable. What she didn't know was that she had just initiated a confrontation with a man who didn't tolerate obstacles in his path and who was willing to do anything to achieve his objectives. The days in the basement turned into weeks. Hope adapted her routine to the new circumstances, carrying extra masks and additional medication to counteract the effects of the unhealthy environment. Each morning, before descending to her subterranean exile, she stopped for a moment at the entrance of the building, breathing deeply the fresh air like someone preparing for a prolonged immersion. "You look paler, neighbor," commented Mrs. Carter, the florist who had her stand in front of the Wilson Historical Documents building. "That job of yours is consuming you." "These are difficult times, Mrs. Carter," Hope responded with a tired smile. "But I'll endure." In the basement, away from Valencia's watchful eye, Hope found an unexpected advantage: freedom to investigate. The forgotten archives contained valuable information, old files that no one had reviewed for years. With methodical patience, she began to reconstruct the puzzle that was hidden behind the accidental losses of documents. One afternoon, while organizing a box of deteriorated files, her phone vibrated with a message from Lucy. "Emergency meeting. Upstairs. Valencia just left. You have 15 minutes. Hope hurried upstairs, adjusting her respirator. The main office was empty except for Lucy, who was waiting for her with a worried expression. "Something's happening, Hope," Lucy whispered, looking nervously toward the door. "Valencia has been receiving strange visitors, men in suits who don't introduce themselves, meetings behind closed doors, and after each visit he asked me to look for specific files." "What kind of files?" asked Hope, although she already intuited the answer. "Tax fraud cases, mainly. Construction companies, importers, all connected in some way to the Valencia business group." Before they could continue, the sound of the elevator alerted them. Lucy quickly pushed Hope toward the copy room. "Go, quickly. If he sees you up here..." Hope returned to the basement with more questions than answers. That same night, she decided to take a risk. She waited until the building was completely empty and stealthily went up to Valencia's office. The door was locked, but years ago, when Mr. Wilson ran the company, all employees knew where the master key was kept. With luck, Valencia wouldn't have changed that system. Indeed, the key was still hidden behind the fire extinguisher in the hallway. With trembling hands, Hope opened the office door and entered, closing it behind her. The darkness was barely interrupted by the streetlight filtering through the half-open blinds. She turned on the small flashlight on her phone and began to methodically review the documents on the desk. Nothing relevant. She moved on to the drawers. The first was full of office supplies. The second contained personal documentation. It was in the third, locked, where she found her first obstacle. "Come on, Hope, think," she said to herself. She carefully observed the desk and noticed a small, shiny object under the lamp, a paperclip. With surprising skill for someone with no experience in lockpicking, she managed to open the drawer after several attempts. What she found confirmed her suspicions, a red folder with the label Operation Cleanup. Inside, a detailed list of judicial files, and next to each one, the word eliminated or pending. All the cases involved companies of the Valencia Group or their business partners. Hope took out her phone and photographed each page, with trembling fingers from the adrenaline. She was so concentrated that she didn't hear the steps in the hallway until it was too late. The door opened suddenly. "Well, well, the lady with the weak lungs has strong guts," said Richard Valencia, leaning against the doorframe with terrifying calmness. "Did you find something interesting in my desk, Mrs. Matthews?" Hope froze, the phone still in her hand, the incriminating photographs in her gallery. "I was just looking for some documents they asked me to review," she improvised, trying to keep her voice firm. Valencia smiled, that cold smile that never reached his eyes. "At this hour, without authorization?" He took a step toward her. "Delivering confidential documents is a serious crime, you know. I could report you." "I haven't delivered anything to anyone," Hope responded, backing up until she felt the desk against her back. "But you would, right? You and your ethics." He pronounced the last word with contempt. "People like you don't understand how the real world works, Mrs. Matthews. Sometimes for a business to prosper, you have to clear the path." "Clear? Is that what you call destroying evidence of tax fraud?" The words left her mouth before she could contain them. Valencia's expression hardened. "So you already know." He advanced another step. "It's a shame. I really appreciated your meticulous work." Hope felt the air escaping from her lungs, not from her illness, but from the fear that invaded her. In a desperate move, she feigned a severe coughing attack, reaching for her respirator and increasing the oxygen flow. The distraction worked. Valencia instinctively backed away. "I need air," she gasped, heading towards the door. To her surprise, Valencia didn't stop her. "Go home, Mrs. Matthews, rest. Tomorrow we'll talk about your future in the company." Hope left staggering, aware of Valencia's gaze fixed on her back. Once on the street, she breathed the fresh night air of Portland, trying to calm her racing heart. She knew she had just crossed a point of no return. That night, in the safety of her apartment, she reviewed the photographs. The evidence was conclusive. Valencia was systematically destroying judicial documents to protect his companies from investigations for tax fraud. The question was, what to do with that information? She couldn't trust the local police. Valencia's economic power surely reached there. She needed someone external, someone who couldn't be bought or intimidated. She remembered Mary Fontaine, an independent journalist known for her investigations into corporate corruption. She had seen her on television, defying threats to expose uncomfortable truths. If anyone could help her, it was her. With renewed determination, Hope created backups of the photographs and drafted a detailed email explaining everything she had discovered. She included dates, names, connections between the companies involved. She hesitated a moment before pressing send. She was about to unleash a storm that could sweep away her tranquil existence. "For the truth," she murmured, and sent the email. The next morning, Hope went to work as if nothing had happened. She knew she had to keep up appearances while waiting for some response from the journalist. Upon arriving at the building, she noticed something strange. The reception was empty, and an unusual silence enveloped the place. "Lucy," she called, but received no response. She went down to the basement to her assigned space and found her desk completely empty. Her files, her notes, Everything had disappeared. In their place, there was only a handwritten note. Main office, 10 a.m. The clock marked 9:55. With her heart racing but her determination intact, Hope went up to Valencia's office. Something told her that this meeting would define the course of her life. Upon entering the office, she was surprised to find not only Valencia but also Lucy, and two men she didn't know dressed in expensive suits with impassive expressions. "Ah, Mrs. Matthews," smiled Valencia, "just in time for our little departmental restructuring." The room was plunged into a tense silence as Valencia circled his desk to approach Hope. Only the soft hum of the respirator broke that artificial stillness. "These gentlemen are attorneys Guthrie and Munro, legal representatives of the Valencia Business Group," he announced with feigned cordiality. "And I believe you already know Ms. Ordway." Lucy remained standing in a corner, with her gaze fixed on the floor. Her body language screamed discomfort and guilt. "What does this mean?" asked Hope, clinging to the strap of her bag where she kept her phone with the evidence. "It means, dear Hope," Valencia responded, pronouncing her name with false sweetness, "that we are conducting an internal audit. Important documents have disappeared and coincidentally, they all passed through your hands." One of the lawyers, Guthrie, stepped forward with a folder. "Mrs. Matthews, we have evidence that you have been manipulating confidential files without authorization. That constitutes a serious violation of your contract." "That's absurd," Hope answered firmly. "The documents haven't disappeared. They have been deliberately destroyed under Mr. Valencia's orders to cover up tax fraud by his associated companies." Valencia let out a theatrical laugh. "What a vivid imagination. Did you hear that, gentlemen? According to our employee, I am orchestrating a conspiracy worthy of a soap opera." "I have evidence," said Hope, holding Valencia's gaze. The businessman's smile faltered for an instant. "Evidence? What evidence could a simple document reviewer have?" "Photographs of your Operation Cleanup folder, detailed records of each, eliminated document, dates, names, companies involved." The atmosphere changed instantly. The lawyers exchanged concerned looks. Lucy raised her head, amazed, and Valencia, his mask of cordiality crumbled completely. "Lucy, accompany the attorneys to the conference room. I need a moment alone with Mrs. Matthews." "But, sir," Lucy tried to protest. "Now," ordered Valencia with a sharp voice. Reluctantly, the three left the office. As soon as the door closed, Valencia transformed. His relaxed posture gave way to a palpable tension, like a predator preparing to attack. "Where are those supposed proofs?" he asked, approaching dangerously. Hope backed away, keeping the desk between them. "In a safe place, and programmed to be automatically sent to several people if something happens to me." It was a partial bluff. Although she had sent the email to Mary Fontaine, she hadn't received a response yet, and she hadn't established any automatic sending system. "Impressive," Valencia acknowledged, recovering part of his composure. "I didn't expect so much foresight on your part." He poured himself a glass of water from the dispenser in a corner of the office. "You know, we could reach an agreement. You're an intelligent woman. Surely you understand that we all have a price." "I'm not interested in any agreement," Hope responded. "I just want justice to be done." Valencia drank slowly, studying her over the rim of the glass. "Justice? Do you really believe such a thing exists? The system is designed to protect those who have the power and resources to manipulate it." "Maybe, but there are also people willing to challenge that system." "People like you," Valencia smiled without humor. "Idealists. They sacrifice their well-being for abstract principles." He put down the glass and sighed theatrically. "I'll propose something. A meeting. Tomorrow, in the old Valencia Group warehouse in the industrial zone. You bring your copy of the evidence, I bring a check with 6 zeros. We all win." "Why would I trust you?" asked Hope, aware that the proposal was an obvious trap. "Because, dear Hope, it's your only viable option." The implicit threat floated in the air. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m. The address will reach you by message. Come alone, obviously." With that, Valencia ended the conversation. heading toward the door to open it. "You can take the day off, Mrs. Matthews. Consider it a gesture of goodwill while you consider my offer." Hope left the office with a firm step, though inside, she was trembling. In the hallway, Lucy was waiting for her, visibly distressed. "Hope, I didn't know," she began to say. "Didn't know what, Lucy? That you were helping to cover up crimes? Or that eventually they would turn me into a scapegoat?" "It's not that simple," Lucy whispered, looking nervously around. "Valencia has powerful contacts, people who can make problems disappear, and those who cause them." A chill ran down Hope's back. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you," Lucy responded, urgently squeezing her arm. "As a friend, get away from this, Hope. Accept what he offers you and disappear." "Like you did? Selling your integrity out of fear?" Lucy's eyes filled with tears. "For survival. I have 2 children to support, Hope. Not all of us can afford to be heroes." With those words, Lucy hurried away, leaving Hope alone in the silent corridor. That afternoon, secluded in her apartment, Hope considered her options. She tried again to contact Mary Fontaine, this time by phone, but only managed to leave a message on her voicemail. The journalist seemed to have disappeared just when she needed her most. While organizing her thoughts, she noticed something disturbing. The objects on her nightstand seemed slightly moved from their usual position. Her personal computer, upon turning it on, showed recently opened files that she didn't remember having consulted. Someone had been in her apartment. Panic invaded her momentarily, but she breathed deeply, forcing herself to stay calm. If they wanted to intimidate her, they were underestimating her determination. That night, while preparing her respirator for sleep, she discovered that the main hose had been subtly perforated, allowing a barely perceptible oxygen leak. Had she not noticed it, she could have had serious complications during the night. "Enough," she murmured, replacing the hose with the spare she always kept. It was no longer just a matter of justice. Now it was about survival. The next morning, she received a message with the address for the meeting. Throughout the day, Hope worked on a plan. She wouldn't go unprepared to what was clearly a trap, but she also couldn't afford not to attend. Valencia wasn't the type of man who accepted rejection. First, she backed up all the evidence on 3 different devices and hid them in strategic places. Then, she programmed emails with a timer, which would be automatically sent to Mary Fontaine and a human rights lawyer if she didn't deactivate them within 24 hours. Finally, she wrote a detailed letter explaining everything and left it in a sealed envelope with her most trusted neighbor, Mrs. Miller, with instructions to deliver it to the authorities if she didn't return the next day. At 6:30 p.m., Hope took a taxi to the indicated address. The vehicle left her in front of a semi-abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of Portland. The Valencia Group warehouse stood at the back, an imposing structure of concrete and metal, partially covered by vegetation that had grown uncontrolled. With her respirator adjusted and the phone recording in the pocket of her jacket, Hope advanced toward the building. A side door was ajar, as if inviting her to enter. The interior was plunged into darkness, barely illuminated by some emergency lights. The space was wide, with high ceilings and concrete pillars that projected elongated shadows on the dusty floor. Abandoned machinery and stacked boxes created an industrial labyrinth. "Mr. Valencia?" she called, her voice resonating in the empty space. "Punctual as always, Mrs. Matthews." Valencia's voice emerged from the shadows, followed by the man himself, who emerged between 2 pillars. He no longer wore his impeccable office suit, but dark, casual clothes that blended with the surroundings. "Did you bring what we agreed on?" he asked, maintaining his distance. "First, I want to see the check," Hope responded, playing along. Valencia let out a dry laugh. "We both know you're not here for money." He stepped forward. "Where are the copies of those documents?" "I don't have them with me," Hope answered firmly. "Did you really believe I would come unprotected?" Valencia observed her with a mixture of irritation and reluctant respect. "Always so cautious. It's what I like about you, Mrs. Matthews. In other circumstances, you would have been a valuable collaborator." He began to walk in circles around her, like a predator evaluating its prey. Hope turned slowly, always keeping him in sight, aware that every second was being recorded on her phone. "I have a real proposal," said Valencia, stopping, "one that could benefit us both. You deliver all the copies of those documents, and I offer you not only money but a position in my company, one where your condition won't be an obstacle." "My condition?" Indignation ignited Hope's voice. "My illness has never been an obstacle for my work, Mr. Valencia. It was your actions that tried to turn it into one. I wasn't referring to your physical illness, but to your stubborn moral rectitude," Valencia clarified with disdain. "It's a weakness in our world, Mrs. Matthews, one that will cost you dearly if you persist on this path." The atmosphere in the abandoned warehouse became even heavier. Hope noticed movement in the shadows. They were not alone. "Threats, Mr. Valencia. Is that your final answer?" "I prefer to call it a negotiation with all the cards on the table." Valencia advanced one more step. "Last chance, Mrs. Matthews. The documents for your peace." "I can't do that," she responded firmly. "What you've done is illegal. Destroying judicial evidence, falsifying public documents. Enough." Valencia's face contorted into a mask of fury. "I thought you were a reasonable woman. I was wrong." He made a gesture with his hand, and the shadows took. Two burly men emerged from between the columns. Hope recognized one of them as the night security guard from the Wilson Historical Documents building. "These gentlemen will escort you to a place where we can continue our conversation without interruptions," announced Valencia, recovering his false composure. Hope took a step back, quickly evaluating her escape options. They were scarce. The door through which she had entered was blocked by one of the men, and the open space to the nearest exit seemed endless in her condition. "If you harm me, the evidence will automatically come to light," she warned, adjusting her respirator, which was beginning to work more intensely due to her growing anxiety. "An interesting bluff," smiled Valencia. "But I know people like you, meticulous, cautious, but also lonely. You have no one who really backs you up." The men advanced toward her. In a desperate act, Hope pretended to stumble, gaining a few seconds to activate the emergency call on her phone. She didn't know if it would work in that remote place, but it was her only hope. "Don't complicate things, ma'am," said one of the men, grabbing her arm with excessive force. "Let me go," she demanded, struggling to free herself. In the struggle, her respirator momentarily disconnected. The sensation of suffocation was immediate, provoking a violent coughing attack that disconcerted her captors. "Be careful with that device," Valencia ordered nervously. "We need her conscious." Taking advantage of the confusion, Hope managed to break free and ran among the shadows of the warehouse, seeking refuge among the abandoned machinery. Her breathing was increasingly difficult, but the survival instinct drove her to continue. "Find her!" Valencia roared. "She can't have gone far." Hope hid behind an old industrial press, trying to control her labored breathing. The hum of her respirator could betray her, but without it, her lungs wouldn't resist long in that environment loaded with dust and humidity. Flashlight beams began to sweep the space, dangerously approaching her hiding place. Carefully, she slid toward a side hallway, looking for some alternative exit. It was then that she saw it, an old ventilation duct covered by a rusted grate. It seemed wide enough for a person to slide through. Without thinking twice, she headed toward it. With trembling fingers, she tried to remove the metal grate. It was firmly secured, but years of rust had weakened the screws. Using a key she carried in her bag, she managed to loosen it enough to create an opening. "There she is!" The shout came from somewhere behind her. Without time to doubt, Hope introduced herself into the duct, crawling as fast as her strength allowed. The space was narrow and suffocating. Her respirator hit against the metal walls, producing a revealing echo. Behind her, she heard the voices of her pursuers. Someone tried to follow her through the duct, but he was too bulky to advance. "Surround the building," ordered Valencia's distant voice. "That duct must lead somewhere." Hope continued advancing in the darkness, guided only by touch and intuition. After what seemed like an eternity, she felt a current of fresh air. The duct ended in an opening that led to a lower level of the warehouse. Cautiously, she poked her head out. She was about 10 feet from the floor, in what appeared to be an old material depot. Below, piles of cardboard and old papers formed an irregular mound. She had no choice. She adjusted her respirator, closed her eyes, and let herself fall, praying that the landing wouldn't be too hard. The impact was cushioned by the papers, but still, the pain spread throughout her body. For a moment, she was stunned, struggling to recover her breath. Her respirator had shifted, but miraculously it was still working. Voices and hurried steps resonated on the upper floors. She didn't have much time. With effort, she got up and looked for an exit. A metal door at the back of the room seemed her only hope. The door was jammed with a rusty chain, but there was no padlock. With strength born of desperation, Hope pulled repeatedly until the chain gave way with a creak. Outside, night had fallen completely. She found herself in an abandoned backyard, surrounded by a partially ruined metal fence. In the distance, the city lights shone like terrestrial stars, offering a promise of safety. Without hesitation, Hope headed toward the nearest breach in the fence, ignoring the pain that pulsed throughout her body. Each step was a monumental effort, each breath a battle, but determination drove her to continue. She managed to cross the fence just as she heard voices approaching the yard. Without looking back, she ventured into the darkness of an adjacent vacant lot, seeking the path to the main road. After what seemed like an eternity, she finally reached an illuminated service station. The night employee looked at her with alarm. When she entered, staggering, her clothes dirty and torn, her respirator working at full capacity. "Mom, are you okay? Do you need help?" asked the young man coming out from behind the counter. "I need a phone," Hope managed to articulate between labored breaths, "and call the police." The employee acted quickly, offering her his own phone. While he dialed emergency services with the store phone, he helped Hope sit in a chair near the window. "The police are on their way," he informed. "What happened to you? Did someone attack you?" Hope didn't respond directly. Instead, with trembling hands, she used the borrowed phone to access her email. She needed to activate the contingency plan immediately. She sent all the compiled evidence to multiple recipients: Mary Fontaine, several national newspapers, and a human rights organization she had previously contacted. She couldn't risk Valencia arriving before the police. "Is there any safe place where I can wait?" she asked the employee, constantly watching the window. "You can use the manager's office. It has a lock," offered the young man, visibly concerned about her state. They had barely entered the small office when they saw a black luxury vehicle abruptly stop in front of the station. Valencia and one of his men descended from the car. "Lock it," Hope whispered urgently, "and if they ask for me, you haven't seen me." The employee nodded, closing the door just as the entry bell announced new customers. From her hiding place, Hope could hear Valencia's voice, artificially friendly, asking if they had seen a woman with a respirator. "No, sir, I've been alone for hours," the employee responded with surprising conviction. Through a small window, Hope saw how Valencia scrutinized the place with a suspicious look. For a terrible moment, his eyes stopped on the office door. Hope held her breath. At that precise instant, the sirens of 2 police patrols resonated in the distance, rapidly approaching. Valencia and his companion exchanged alarmed looks before hurriedly returning to their vehicle, which sped away. When the police arrived, Hope emerged from her refuge, exhausted but determined. This time her story would be heard. This time she had irrefutable evidence. "I need to report an attempted assault and a scheme of judicial evidence destruction," she declared to the officer who received her, her voice weak but firm. "And I need official protection. The man who tried to assault me is powerful and won't stop easily." The following days passed like a whirlwind for Hope. After receiving medical attention for her superficial wounds, she was welcomed into a witness protection program while her case advanced in the judicial system. The evidence she had meticulously compiled proved to be more compelling than she herself had anticipated. From the safety of a shelter house on the outskirts of Seattle, Hope followed the events through the news and the reports provided by her assigned lawyer Carla Stone, a middle-aged woman with determination etched in every wrinkle of her face. "The evidence is irrefutable," Carla informed her during one of her weekly visits. "The files you documented establish a clear pattern of obstruction of justice and destruction of evidence. The audio recordings of your encounter in the warehouse are especially damning." Hope nodded, adjusting her respirator. The incident in the warehouse had temporarily worsened her pulmonary condition, requiring an increase in her medication. "What about Valencia? I understand he has many connections," she asked, the concern evident in her voice. "He had them," confirmed Carla, with a satisfied smile. "But it turns out your evidence not only implicated him, but several public officials and prominent businessmen. When the scandal broke, they all began to distance themselves. No one wanted to sync with him." The news that most surprised Hope came one morning while she was having breakfast in the small kitchen of her temporary refuge. On television, the face of Mary Fontaine appeared, the journalist she had initially contacted. "After weeks of exhaustive investigation, today we present a special report on the case that has shaken the business sector of Portland," the journalist announced before the cameras. "A conspiracy to eliminate judicial evidence that involves some of the most important construction companies in the country." Hope watched fascinated as the journalist meticulously exposed every detail of the case, presenting documents, recordings, and testimonies that corroborated her complaint. The final piece of the report left her breathless. This investigation would not have been possible without the extraordinary courage of a woman who, despite her vulnerable medical condition and facing direct threats against her person, decided to defend the truth at all costs. Hope Matthews, former employee of Wilson Historical Documents, now under official protection, not only saved crucial evidence from being destroyed, but meticulously documented the cover-up attempt. Silent tears ran down Hope's cheeks as the journalist continued. "I contacted Mrs. Matthews more than a month ago when I received her first email with preliminary evidence. I asked her to continue gathering evidence while I investigated the business connections. Unfortunately, my initial silence was misinterpreted as disinterest, which almost resulted in tragic consequences. I assume that responsibility and offer my public apologies." That afternoon, Carla arrived with important news. The judge has issued arrest warrants against Valencia and 6 more executives, she announced triumphantly. The prosecutor's office is offering a deal to some minor implicated individuals in exchange for testimonies against the main responsible parties. "And what will happen to Wilson Historical Documents?" asked Hope, thinking of her former colleagues. "The company is being judicially intervened. There are plans to restructure it and return it to its original purpose under new management." Carla paused, observing her with curiosity. "In fact, they've asked if you would be interested in returning in a position of greater responsibility." Hope remained silent, contemplating the offer. Part of her yearned to return to normality, to the routine she so appreciated. But another, part one that had awakened during this odyssey, knew that she was no longer the same person. The real surprise came a week later, when she received the unexpected visit of Lucy Ordway. Her former colleague seemed to have aged years in just a few weeks. "I didn't expect you to want to see me," Lucy confessed, sitting nervously on the edge of the sofa. "I didn't expect it either," admitted Hope frankly. "But I suppose we all deserve a chance to explain ourselves." Lucy breathed deeply before speaking. "I want you to know that I was the one who alerted the journalist about your situation. After Valencia set that trap for you in the warehouse," her voice broke, "I felt so cowardly, so complicit. I couldn't continue living like that." "You contacted Mary Fontaine?" Hope couldn't hide her astonishment. "Yes, I told her everything. I knew. I gave her copies of documents that I had secretly kept. It was a risk, but it was the right thing to do." Lucy looked directly into her eyes for the first time. "I'm sorry I didn't have your courage from the beginning, Hope." That encounter marked a turning point. Little by little, other former colleagues began to contact her, some to apologize for their silence, others to thank her for her bravery. The Matthews case, as the media now called it, had inspired other whistleblowers to step forward in different companies and institutions. 3 months after the incident at the warehouse, the trial against Richard Valencia formally began. Hope testified on the first day, directly confronting the man who had tried to silence her. Valencia, stripped of his usual arrogance, avoided her gaze throughout the session. "Do you recognize the accused as the person who attempted to assault you in the abandoned warehouse on the night of May 15th? asked the prosecutor. "Yes, I recognize him," Hope responded with a clear and firm voice without a trace of the fear she once felt. Upon leaving the courthouse, surrounded by a small security team, she encountered a crowd of reporters and cameras. Among them, she distinguished Mary Fontaine, who gave her a discreet gesture of admiration. Hope wasn't seeking fame or recognition. Each interview she granted, each public appearance, was simply a means to ensure that justice would follow its course without interference. Her testimony inspired other employees of Wilson Historical Documents to speak up, creating an avalanche of evidence impossible to ignore or discredit. When the verdict finally arrived, 6 months after her desperate escape through the ventilation duct, Hope wasn't in the courtroom. She preferred to receive the news in the tranquility of her new home, a small apartment in Boulder, where she had decided to start anew. "Guilty on all charges," Carla informed her by phone. "Valencia will face years in prison, and the sentence includes restitution for damages caused to all people affected by his actions." After hanging up, Hope went out to the small balcony of her apartment. The view overlooked a tree-lined park, where families were enjoying the sunny afternoon. She breathed deeply, feeling how the clean air of Boulder filled her lungs with less effort than before. Her doctor had explained that prolonged stress had exacerbated her condition, and that, now in a calmer environment with fewer pressures, her lungs showed signs of gradual improvement. She would never be completely cured, but she could aspire to a considerably better quality of life. The offer to return to Wilson Historical Documents, now under judicial administration, was still standing. They had proposed she lead a new department of transparency and corporate ethics, a position created specifically with her skills and experience in mind. It was tempting, but Hope had discovered a new vocation. In collaboration with Mary Fontaine and a group of attorneys specialized in labor rights, she had founded Breathing Justice, an organization dedicated to supporting whistleblowers of corporate corruption. From her small office in Boulder, they offered legal advice, psychological support, and practical resources to those who dared to challenge corrupt systems. One afternoon, while reviewing potential cases, she received a certified envelope. Inside, she found a handwritten letter from Lucy. "Dear Hope, news about your new organization has reached Portland. I'm not surprised at all. I always knew your heart was as strong as your determination. Wilson. Historical Documents is not the same without you, but it's changing for the better thanks to you. I've started working with a local government transparency group. My children say they finally understand what my work is about, and they seem proud. You don't know how much that means to me. Someday, when you're ready, I'd like us to meet. There are so many people here who would like to thank you personally. With admiration and affection, Lucy." Hope smiled, carefully storing the letter. Perhaps someday she would return to Portland, not as a victim or a heroine, but simply as a woman who had found her purpose in defending the truth. That night, while preparing her respirator for sleep, a ritual she now performed almost mechanically, Hope reflected on the extraordinary turn her life had taken. From being a discreet employee who sought to go unnoticed, she had become the voice of those who feared to speak. Her phone rang with a notification. It was a message from Carla with a link to a news article. "Corrupt businessman forced to pay. Millions in compensation to affected employees." Alongside the link, Carla had written, "Your silent victory continues to resonate. Rest easy tonight. You deserve it." Hope turned off the light with a serene smile. The soft hum of her respirator, that constant companion that once seemed to limit her life, now reminded her of her inner strength. She had confronted a powerful and ruthless man and had prevailed, not with physical strength but with something much more powerful, the truth. In the darkness of her room, she whispered the words that had become her organization's motto. "Justice, like air, is essential for life, and we all deserve to breathe freely. Dear listeners, we hope that Hope Matthews' story has deeply moved you. Her fight against injustice and her triumph, despite her physical limitations, reminds us of the power we all have within to defend the truth. To continue this emotional journey, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. Find it here by clicking to your left. If you like this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and the human spirit. Would you like to hear more stories about corporate justice,